this stuff. I had my fill, to tell the truth. Everybody blows me. But wow, there's kid cuisine. An awesome meal that's made just for me.
The homemade treats we miss most. Close your eyes and think about your grandmother's kitchen. Go on, really think about it. The smell of something warm coming out of the oven. The sound of mixing bowls and wooden spoons. A kitchen that looked like it had been decorated by someone who genuinely believed that avocado green was the peak of human aesthetic achievement. And on the counter, or in the fridge, or sitting proudly on the dining table covered with a tea towel, something homemade. Something that nobody had bought from a shop. Something that somebody in your family had made with their own two hands, specifically because people were coming over and you did not show up to the 1970s without bringing something. I'm Reto, and today we are going back to the homemade treats of the 1970s that filled every kitchen, every potluck table, and every school bake sale from one end of the decade to the other. The recipes that nobody writes down because everybody just knows them, until suddenly nobody knows them anymore. Treat 1. The Jell-O mold. Let us begin with the undisputed queen of the 1970s kitchen, the Jell-O mold. If you attended any family gathering, any neighborhood potluck, any birthday party or holiday dinner between 1970 and 1979, there was a Jell-O mold on the table, shimmering, wobbling gently. Shaped like a ring or a star or whatever decorative mold your aunt had received as a wedding gift and was absolutely determined to get her money's worth from. The Jell-O mold was made by dissolving flavored gelatin in boiling water, adding fruit or cream cheese, or occasionally both, pouring it into the mold, and leaving it in the fridge overnight. When it came out and sat on its plate, it had a specific quality of movement that was deeply satisfying to look at and impossible to describe to someone who has never seen one. The real genius of the Jell-O mold was that it could be made a day ahead. In the 1970s, this was revolutionary. You could prepare your contribution the night before, put it in the fridge, and arrive at the gathering looking effortlessly organized while everyone else was still warm from the oven. The 1970s hostess knew exactly what she was doing. Treat 2. Deviled eggs. If the Jell-O mold was the queen, then deviled eggs were the reliable, ever-present, always welcome best friend that everyone was genuinely delighted to see arrive. Deviled eggs had existed since the 19th century, but the 1970s were their absolute golden era. They were at every party, every picnic, every family gathering where someone laid out a table of food and hoped for the best, and they always went first, always. You could arrive 2 hours into a party and there would still be 3/4 of the sandwiches left, but the deviled eggs would be completely gone. We know this was the era of deviled eggs because in the 1970s, a company started manufacturing a specific Tupperware container designed exclusively for transporting deviled eggs. It came in harvest gold. Because of course it did. Someone sat down and thought there is enough demand for deviled egg transportation that we should manufacture a dedicated product for this. And they were absolutely right. The recipe was simple. Hard boil the eggs. Halve them. Mix the yolks with mayonnaise, mustard, and paprika. Pipe it back into the whites. Sprinkle more paprika on top. Place them in the harvest gold Tupperware. Drive to the party. Accept the compliments. Treat 3. The cheese fondue. In the 1970s, fondue arrived in America and Britain and completely changed what a dinner party was allowed to be. Fondue originated in Switzerland and had been popular in Europe for decades, but after appearing at the 1964 World's Fair in New York, something clicked, and by the early 1970s, the fondue set had become one of the most popular wedding gifts available. Couples received 3 of them. They used 1. The other 2 went into a cupboard where they remained until approximately 1987. The ones that did come out of the cupboard, though, created something genuinely special. Cheese fondue meant gathering everyone around a single pot of melted Gruyere and Emmentaler, handing out long forks, and spending an hour dipping bread and vegetables into molten cheese while talking about everything and nothing. The shared pot meant everyone had to stay at the table. Everyone had to stay present. You could not wander off with your plate because your plate was the pot and the pot was staying where it was. The unspoken rule of fondue was that if you dropped your bread in the cheese, you owed the table a forfeit, usually a drink. The 1970s dinner party had its own gaming system built right in, and nobody needed an app for it. Treat 4. The poke cake. The poke cake was one of the great accidental inventions of 1970s home baking. The concept was simple and slightly chaotic. You baked a plain sponge cake. Then, while it was still warm, you poked holes all over it with a fork or a skewer. Then you poured liquid jello directly onto the cake and let it soak down into the holes. Then you refrigerated it. Then you covered it in Cool Whip. What came out was a cake that was bright with color wherever the gelatin had soaked through, cool and creamy on top, and genuinely unlike anything that had come before it. It was a cake that had been improved by being stabbed and flooded with dessert and then refrigerated. This should not have worked. It absolutely worked. The poke cake became a staple of bake sales and school events throughout the decade. It was easy enough that children could help make it. It was visually striking enough that it always got noticed on a table. And it tasted like something someone's mom had made for you specifically, which is the highest possible compliment any food can receive. Treat 5. Carrot cake. In the 1970s, carrot cake became the snack that convinced an entire generation they were making a healthy choice while eating cake. The logic went like this. The cake contains carrots. Carrots are a vegetable. Vegetables are good for you. Therefore, this cake is good for you. This reasoning was not challenged with any particular urgency by anyone who wanted a second slice. Carrot cake experienced a major revival in the 1970s, partly because it was marketed as a health food during an era when people were becoming newly interested in nutrition, and partly because the New York Times published a recipe for it in 1972, which immediately made it feel sophisticated and deliberate rather than something you had found in an old recipe book and decided to try. It was made with oil instead of butter, which gave it a dense, moist texture that kept well for several days. It was topped with cream cheese frosting that was rich enough to be a dessert in its own right. And it sat on kitchen counters across America and Britain throughout the decade, being cut into slices for anyone who passed through and described as not really that bad for you considering there are actual vegetables in it. Treat 6. Rice Krispie Treats. Some things are so perfect that no decade can really claim them because every decade wants them. But the 1970s genuinely loved Rice Krispie Treats with a specific intensity that deserves acknowledgement. The recipe had existed since the 1930s when it was developed by Kellogg's as a fundraising recipe. But in the 1970s, it became the go-to treat for school events, bake sales, church gatherings, and any occasion where someone needed to make a lot of something quickly with ingredients they almost certainly already had in the house. Melt butter. Add marshmallows. Stir until combined. Add Rice Krispies. Press into a tray. Wait for it to set. Cut into squares. Done. 6 ingredients. No oven required. Ready in 20 minutes. Could be made by a 10-year-old with minimal supervision. Survived being transported in a tin to a school event without falling apart. Disappeared from the table faster than almost anything else on it. The Rice Krispie treat solved every problem the 1970s home baker had. It is still solving them now. Some recipes do not need to be improved, and those are the homemade treats of the 1970s that we miss most. The wobbling Jell-O mold, the deviled eggs in the Harvest Gold Tupperware, the fondue pot that made everyone stay at the table, the poke cake that had been stabbed and improved, the carrot cake that was definitely a health food, the Rice Krispie treats that solved everything. These were not complicated recipes. They were not sophisticated, but they were made by hand by someone who wanted the people around them to feel welcomed and looked after and fed. And that is something that no delivery app has ever quite managed to replicate. Which one takes you straight back? Tell us in the comments below. We genuinely want to know which treat your family made and whether you still make it today. Share this with someone whose kitchen smelled like this once. And like, share, and subscribe so you never miss a rewind. I'm Reto, and this has been your Rewind.